Back in September, I posted a short about a shiny Pokemon giveaway that I wanted to do. The only rule was that you had to comment whatever shiny you wanted, and I would try to the best of my ability to get it for you. I hunted for Pokemon using every game that I had access to on my Switch too, even transferring over some shinies that I forgot I had on my Pokemon Go account. There were a few comments, but my cutoff day was December 20th, which means I had about 3 months to catch as many shinies as I possibly could. Now, when it comes to shiny hunting between the different games, there are some things that are the same, and there are some things that are different. Let's first talk about the things that are pretty much the same. For starters, all of the Pokemon in these games have a base odds of 1 in 4,096 to spawn in as a shiny. All of these games have a shiny charm that can reduce these odds by a pretty significant amount. Except for you for some reason. They make up for it with the Pok Radar though, but more on that later. The shiny charm can be acquired by catching all of the Pokemon, excluding legendaries, in the game. Legends Arceus handles that a bit differently though. Each of the Pokemon have research levels that go up when you encounter them, and you need to get all of them to level 10 to get the shiny charm. Any of the games that have Pokemon breeding have a technique to boost shiny odds called the Masuda method. If you take 2 Pokemon that are from 2 different countries and you put them in the daycare together, the egg that you get from them has a very high chance of being a shiny. But in all honesty, I never enjoyed doing this. Every time I tried to shiny hunt using this method, I would give up after about 50 eggs. It's just so boring. Let's go over the unique hunting methods between each game and go over which ones I used. I'm going to try to arrange these methods from the easiest to the most maddening thing that you could do to get a slightly different colored bird. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have 2 things that you can do to drastically improve your shiny odds. The first is sandwiches, a feature they added that allows you to get additional buffs for both catching and battling depending on the ingredients that you put on the sandwich. You can have 3 buffs at a time for 30 minutes, and they max out at level 3. In order to get level 3, you need a special ingredient called Herba Mystica that you can acquire from doing in-game raids. The 2 buffs that matter the most are Encounter Power, which raises the encounter rate of a specific type of Pokemon, and Sparkling Power, which improves shiny odds. When you combine all of that with our next method, Outbreaks, you can really up your chances of finding a lot of shinies.
Oh, whoa, holy shit, wait a minute, we got 2! There's another one over there!
The Outbreaks alone up the spawn rate of a specific Pokemon, but if you're able to knock out 60 of them with the auto-battling feature, that will increase your odds of finding a shiny incredibly. And since I was playing on the Switch too, I was swarmed. I used both of these methods with the shiny charm. I mentioned earlier how Legends Arceus has research levels for the Pokemon you catch. Getting the research level to 10 actually ups the chances of finding a shiny for that specific Pokemon. Raising this level is pretty easy, so any Pokemon I was hunting, I would make sure to max it out. But there is another layer to the research, and that's perfecting, where you have to witness very specific things listed in the Pokedex a certain amount of times. This will also increase your odds of finding a shiny. I didn't do this. It would take so much time, and sometimes the Pokemon I want to hunt is a coward who runs away from a fight. There is also Outbreaks, but I'll be honest, I didn't reach a point in the game where I could access those very frequently. I had actually gotten Legends Arceus around the time I put out the original short, but I was liking it so much that I didn't want to rush through it for the sake of the hunt. So the only thing I was able to utilize for shiny hunting was Research Level 10. The Let's Go games have a version of chaining called a catch combo. This is essentially when you encounter and catch the same Pokemon over and over until you make a big number appear on the screen. The combo breaks if you catch a different Pokemon or if any Pokemon runs away from you, which can happen in these games. It was originally believed that doing this upped the shiny odds of the Pokemon you were chaining every time you caught an additional one. Then it was discovered that the shiny odds were only better for the next Pokemon in that chain to spawn in. The biggest benefit of chaining was that it would increase the spawn rate of something like an Eevee, which has a base spawn rate of 5%. But if you pop on a lure and then get an Eevee chain to a minimum of 31, you'll be swarmed by them. And you can see if they're shiny when they spawn in, which is pretty nice. I did this while having the shiny charm and didn't get as many as I was hoping, but more on that data later. Pokemon Sword and Shield have a method that actually had me a bit confused for quite a while. So to start, there's what's called Brilliant Pokemon. Surrounded by this strange gold aura, these Pokemon get some additional benefits with their stats and the moves they could have, but what we care about is how their odds of being shiny are cut entirely in half, which is huge. Except, Brilliant Pokemon only have a 1.5% chance of spawning, but if you battle a specific Pokemon 500 times, it can actually up the chances of you finding a Brilliant version of that Pokemon, and increase the shiny odds of that Brilliant Pokemon by quite a lot. See, this is where I got confused. I had thought that battling a Pokemon 500 times upped the shiny chances of that specific Pokemon, and not just the Brilliant version of that Pokemon. These games also have a whole thing about shiny hunting with Dynamax adventures, but I actually didn't learn about it until way later, so I won't cover that in this video, but I would like to get into it someday soon. I did, however, do quite a lot to acquire the shiny charm for this game. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. My overall experience with this game was rough. Because, see? Look! Do you see? Do you see what I mean? It just does this. It's the only game. But this isn't a review. We're talking about shiny Pokemon. Earlier, I had briefly mentioned how the shiny charm doesn't work in this game, which is half true. It does work, but it only improves the odds of finding a shiny with eggs, and I'm not doing the Masuda method. This game does have something called a Pok Radar, though. When you use it in the right places, it makes a few bushes shake with Pokemon ready for a fight. Catching or defeating this Pokemon will start a chain, like in the Let's Go games. Wow, unbelievable! And getting your chain to 40 will actually greatly increase your shiny odds. But there's a catch. This can be a lot to explain, but I'll try to simplify this to the best of my ability. You want to always have a repel active so the sneakier Pokemon in the bushes won't bother you. You want to make sure the bush that you go to is at least 4 squares away from where you use the radar. You want to make sure that you catch the Pokemon. Doing those last 2 steps correctly every time will make it so your chain has a 93% chance to not break. Which means even if you do everything perfectly, there's a 7% chance your chain will break. This has been the method that has caused me the most agony. The shiny odds do get better with each catch, so once I was done ripping all my hair out, I would go through the chaining process to land somewhere in the 20s. Once there, I would just run back and forth to recharge the Pok Radar and then activate it to see if a shiny pops up. This method is definitely high risk, shiny reward. So, after all that, you want to know how many Pokemon I caught. You may also want to know how many were asked for. You've come to the right part of the video. Alright, listen, when I made that short, I didn't have any limitations for what people could ask for. Like how 3 of you asked for any. Yeah, there were 3 of you that just said you'd take any. One even said, and I quote, "If there are any left, I'll gladly accept them." Like, no. That's not how this works. Now, this was partially my fault. The only rule was to comment whatever shiny you wanted. And I had made the assumption that people would see this one random guy talking about his excitement getting back into shiny hunting, and then reasonably assume that he probably won't just be able to casually get a Zygarde. But this brings me to my first set of stats that I want to present. Legendaries. Over the years in Pokemon, there has emerged categories within this category. We used to have just legendaries, but now we have sub-legendaries and mythical. Starting with the mythical Pokemon, we have ties for first, second, and third with every submission. Arceus and Mew took the lead together on this one. I haven't really looked into it, but would I even be able to get a shiny Mew? I have a shiny Celebi that I got from a Pokemon Go event, so maybe there was a way to get a shiny Mew in a similar way, but yeah, no, that quest is long gone. Next, we have sub-legendaries. We've got Articuno in first, and that's it. It was also only one submission, so shout out to whoever asked for the best of the 3 original Super Birds. Now it's time for the proper legendaries. In first, we have Rayquaza because, of course, look at him. Second place goes to Zygarde, and then third goes to Koraidon. And then we've got a 7-way tie for 4th place. Next set of stats are Eevee and the Eeveelutions. There were enough submissions in the Eevee line to warrant its own category, which is not surprising, but what was surprising was to see that not every Eeveelution got asked for. Base Eevee actually came in second behind Umbreon, Sylveon came in third, and the one that got left out of it all was Leafeon. Let's hop over to one that I think is very interesting, starters. Starting at Gen 9, we have Fuecoco, and that's it. He was asked for 3 times, plus this was the only generation to have 1 starter asked for. In Gen 8, Scorbunny and Sobble tied with Grookey right behind. Gen 7 only had Rowlet in first with 5 and Popplio in second with 1. Gen 6 had the starter with the most requests. Froakie came in first with 17, Fennekin had 5, and Chespin only had 2. With ZA bringing in the new Mega Evolutions for the Gen 6 starters, and with how popular Greninja was already, this is not surprising. Gen 5 had the least amount of starters because there were none. Nobody wanted any of the starters from Gen 5. Anyway, Gen 4 had a tie between Chimchar and Piplup, with Turtwig hanging out all by themselves with just 1 submission. Gen 3 had Mudkip in first, followed by Trico and then Torchic. A pretty close race, honestly. All of them were only 1 off from each other. Gen 2 was Cyndaquil, then Totodile, then Chikorita. And Gen 1 had our second highest requested starter, with Charmander at 15, followed by Squirtle at 2, and then Bulbasaur at 1. With all this talk of the different generations, why don't we take a look at that data now? I'm not sure if I'm surprised or not at these particular results, but Gen 1 had a whopping 92 requests. Gen 3 came in second place with 54, and then Gen 6 came in third place with 46. Before we get to the final count, let's go over the top 8 most requested Pokemon. And for the record, the way this is being counted is by the baby versions of whatever was asked for. For example, if one person asked for a Beautifly and another person asked for a Dustox, this would count as 2 Wurmple for this section. Also, a tie here means that they are sharing that position, which brings me to number 8, which is tied between Axew, Shinx, and Snorlax at 6 requests. 7th place is Beldum at 7, Magikarp and Ralts tie for 6th place at 8 requests. 5th goes to Rayquaza at 9. 4th is Charmander with 15. 3rd is Dratini at 16. 2nd is Froakie with 17. And 1st place goes to Eevee with 29. Now, it might be a little unfair to let all the Eeveelutions count as just Eevee. Anyway, there were 154 unique Pokemon asked for throughout this giveaway, with a grand total of 358 Pokemon requested. And I caught a nice clean 120. Not bad, all things considered. So something you might have asked while watching this is, why? Why decide to do a shiny Pokemon giveaway for seemingly no reason? That's where you're wrong. I do seemingly have a reason. I've been playing these games since Pokemon Blue came out, and even though I haven't been a diehard fan my entire life, I've got a lot of great memories with these games that I'll always cherish. And I've been making more with my rediscovered love for the series. So with my sudden urge to shiny hunt, I thought I could find a way to give people something they've always wanted while also having them share their memories of Pokemon with me. Like how SMC Silva borrowed a copy of Emerald from their friend and then thought they had broken it when a green Wingull popped up on screen. Or how Pixel Pulse wanted a shiny Rockruff because it was their favorite Pokemon in their Sun and Moon playthrough, and it reminded them of their dog. Or Roborocket catching a shiny Axew in Pokemon Black, and it was their first ever full odd shiny, but they had to give them up when they sold their games. Or how Griff found a shiny Tropius, but after they lent their copy of Ruby to their friend, that same friend ended up moving away before giving it back to them. These are the stories that I wanted to read about. I guess you could say that I tricked a ton of you into sharing these with me. It's incredibly nefarious, I know. There was one story in particular that stood out to me, though. This story is about Foxglove. One day, Mafi was doing some random wonder trades, and they happened to be sent a shiny Nickit. They were super excited. They kept that shiny with them their entire journey, exploring all of Galar, defeating all the gym leaders, and when it was finally time to transfer Foxglove over to Pokemon Home, they couldn't leave, because they were hacked into the game. This story really spoke to me. It made me want to boot up my copy of Shield for the first time in years to get a real shiny for Mafi. The only problem was I didn't have the shiny charm. I hadn't even beat the game, but that's fine, right? Earlier you saw that I had battled 500 Nickit, which sounds like it will help, but the boost in brilliant Pokemon spawning isn't nearly enough for this to be viable. I'm gonna have to work towards getting the shiny charm. I'm gonna have to catch them all. It took a long time, but after using all the games at my disposal and making trades on the GTS, I finally was able to get the shiny charm. But the problem is, even with the improved shiny odds, it just doesn't feel like a good idea to go after brilliant Pokemon. I need to do whatever I can to best maximize my time. So I'm gonna have to do the one thing I don't want to do. I'm gonna have to do the Masuda method. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I didn't think the short that I originally posted was going to get as much traction as it did, but honestly, it just means that more people are going to be happy with their new shiny Pokemon. If you enjoyed this, then please leave a like and consider subscribing. I stream on here as well, doing all sorts of things with Pokemon and all sorts of things not with Pokemon. And I want to give a quick thanks to Mafi for the character sprites that you've all been seeing throughout this video.
Anyways, bye.